Hey, it's Ravi Jalobos, and in this video, I wanted to talk about how to get background images as well as custom fonts. And let me go ahead and start by kind of going through what we have right now. We have this very small website. It's got a few pages in there, and this page has a sample section that has some images. What I want to do is show you how to make sure the fonts look custom and then add some background images to the different pages. So in order to do that, what we're going to do first is we're going to go to Google WebFonts, which is at this URL, google.com/fonts. And the way that this works is by letting you type in a name of a font over here. So on the top left, you type in a font that you want. Say you want something like Merriweather, which is one of my favorites. And once you find something you like, you can click on Add to Collection. It'll come down here in a collection. I don't know why it's not showing up right now. Let's see, if we go to use, you can see the fonts and choose the weights that you want. So I'll go back to choose and get another one here. So I'll do Brie as well. Brie Serif, add it to the collection. And now it says two families. I'm not exactly sure why it's not showing them. Just could be a temporary bug. But otherwise, you just kind of go through and choose the type of fonts that you want. If you don't put anything in here, you can see all of them. And there's a ton to choose from. So just go through and find the ones that you want to use and then add them to the collection. When you're done, you're going to click on Use. And under Use, you want to choose as few font sizes as you can. So like you don't have to pick all these. Just choose the ones that you're going to use in your document because it'll obviously affect the page loading and file size of the web page that you're doing. And then down here, you can add this code to your site if you want to. So you can just grab this link href tag, and it will add this onto your page as long as you paste it in the HTML section of your website. So if you grab that and paste it somewhere in here, that will add the fonts. However, there's a little bit of a problem because if you do add this code, so let me just go ahead and add and show you. Let's go ahead and add this code right here. And then I'm going to just copy this and switch over to the validator. And I'm going to switch over to the validate by direct input, paste that in there, and hit the check button. So you'll see that it has an error, and the error that it comes up with is in this font section. The problem is that it doesn't like this bar right here in between the two names. So there's actually a couple of ways of fixing that. Number one is you can split the font up into multiple sort of calls. So, and just making sure that you're calling one font per line. So if we do this and we get rid of the other one here. So now we're only calling one font per link tag. If I do this and revalidate, so let's see, revalidate button is right here. Then it's going to validate just fine. So it's no big deal. I mean, I usually use validation just to make sure my HTML is okay, just as a way to test things out. So it's no big deal that it doesn't validate. You can ignore it if you want to. However, if you wanted to make sure that everything's clean, then you could split it up like this. So the other option is to use the alternate version of the tag. So if you click right here under import, it's going to allow you to import that into your style sheet. And that's actually a little bit better because if we import it this way and we have a bunch of different web pages, we're going to have to insert the tags in the head section of every one of our pages. Now, if we are linking to a style sheet file, every one of our pages is already going to be linking to that style sheet. So if we just add the font to that style sheet, then it will just be imported in one place and we don't have to keep on updating files. So I'm going to do that this way. So first I'm going to need a CSS file. I don't have one right here. So I'm going to go to the file menu and select new, and I'm going to save this as style.css, and I'll hit save right there. And I'm going to go over to Google WebFonts, grab this thing right here, and then paste it. So this essentially imports the fonts or the CSS files for the fonts at the beginning of our CSS file. So excellent. Now, if you want to use that in our document, what we need to do is, let's go ahead and hide this. Let's go ahead and go back, I guess, to the home page. Then we need to put in a selector. I'll just go ahead and add the body selector. And then we need to put in the name of what we want to do here. So font family. and we're going to use Merriweather. So the rule is, if you are using a font name that just has one word like this, then you don't really need these quotes. If you're using a font name like, say, Breeze Serif, then since it has two words, then you're going to need to put it in quotations like that. So for the main font, I think I'm just going to use Merriweather. It's okay if you add the quotes in. It's not going to hurt anything. And you usually want to have some backups here. So maybe like Merriweather, and if that doesn't work, then I'm just going to say serif, right? That just will give it the default serif typeface. Let's get rid of these quotations. And it doesn't look like it's coming up. That's interesting. Oh, the reason it's not coming up is because we haven't actually imported this into our page. The way that we import this is using the link tag. And in the link tag, we just add the name of the style sheet. So style.css. So it comes up and it shows you the proper style sheet. So we could do some more if we want to. So we can come back here and say H1, comma, H2, comma, H3, H4, H5, H6. And we'll make that the other font, which is font family. And then in quotations, we'll put Bree serif, sort of like a slab serif font. And then we could do sans serif as a backup just in case. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. And that's pretty much all you need to use custom fonts. You just find the Google font that you want. It's better if you use this import tag, but you do have to remember, let me go ahead and save this, that I need to go into every page and add this link tag. So I'm going to need to go into every one of these, and in the head section, just add that in there. And when I do, you can see the fonts updating here. Samples, skills, right? And social media. Okay, and let's see. I think we got all of them. So let me just navigate home, skills, experience, social media, samples. Everything's looking good. So what if we want to add a background image? Well, to do that in your style sheet, you can use the background tag. There's actually different versions of this tag. So you can say background, and then you can say URL, and usually put in parentheses and quotations. Although I think you can not use the quotations. You put in the location of the image that you want to use. So in the images folder, I have a backgrounds folder. And in that folder, I have some different backgrounds. So let me use the Vancouver port picture here. Vancouver port.jpg. And I need to make sure that I say it's in the images folder, and then in the backgrounds folder, and it's called Vancouver. And there is the Vancouver photo background. Now, you can't tell, it's a really big photo, so it comes up and it kind of takes up as much room as it can, starting from the top left of the image. There's actually a lot more to this image. So let's go to some of the other pages, and you can see a little bit more of the picture there. So that looks okay, but there's actually a lot of different versions of this background tag. You can use this. This one's actually known as a combo tag version, or this one's known as a combo version. So you can use background, and then you can say other things in here. So you can actually use a version of this called background image, and it does exactly the same thing. And if you study the way that the background tag works, you can specify a lot of these different tags. So background image lets you set the image that you're using. Background position lets you set the position of the image. So you can say something like background position, right? And then say center. Oops, I'm sorry. Sometimes this thing types in, and then center. And what's happening here is now the image, instead of starting at the top left of the image, maybe it'll help if I can show you what this image looks like. I think, yeah, if I click. So here's what the image looks like. So what it's doing here is starting from the center of the image, it's looking at the size of your page and just putting the image in the center, right? And cropping it out based on the page size that you're running right now. So that's sort of okay. But there's some other properties that you can add. You can say background size. So let's try that one, like background size. And I don't know if that's going to do anything right now. Let's go ahead and make it like 50%, right? And 50%. So what this is doing is making the photo half the size vertically and horizontally. And you could see that on the web, when you put a photo in a background, it by default will start repeating. So you can actually add another property here called background repeat and say no repeat, I think it is. Repeat, right? Background repeat. Right? And now you have just the image by itself. Let's see what happens if you say auto here now. And I think it's just making it 50% of the width or 50% of the size of the image, and then whatever the height ends up being here. So we can actually make it this like 80%, 90%, 100. So this actually makes it 100% of the width of the, I guess, the browser, or the, looks like the image maybe. Okay, anyways. So you've got all these different sort of properties here that you can use, and you can read this page on the developer.mozilla.org site to see all the different options. However, if you just want to make a full screen background image, then this page right here on Chris Coyer's CSStricks.com website gives you the code so that you can get a perfect full screen background image, which is usually what I want to do. So I'm just going to grab this code right here, and I'll go back over here, and I'm going to replace this here. So obviously that's not the right URL. So let me just get rid of these, and I'll paste mine right here, and then I'll grab the location of the image that I want to use, right, and replace the one on the Chris Coyer page. Yeah, notice that you don't have to use the quotations. It's just fine if you don't. So let's go ahead and let's see. We'll add that right there. And the difference here is that it's making the image go full screen on the page as much as possible. So it's sort of adjusting things a little bit better. If I make this like less tall, it kind of looks like it's trying to fit the image in as much as the browser window as possible. So that is actually pretty cool. Now, you probably are wondering, this is kind of annoying. I can't read some of this text. This is kind of not very clear. So let's go ahead and just add something to fix that a little bit. So let me go ahead and save this style sheet. And what I want to do is make sure that I have a container on the whole page. So right now I have here a section class container that's just containing this main part of the text right here. So I'm actually going to change that to section class main, and then I'm going to create a tag over here. I'll call it section class container, right? And I'm going to put all my content in every page inside that container. So all my header, my footer, all my stuff is going to go right here. And let's see. So now I have that section tag, and it contains like everything else on the page. Looks like this beginning part got deleted a little bit of this header when I copied things. Okay, so this is wrapping everything. And so what I can do then is target that. But before I do that, let's go ahead and make sure that I fix that on every page. So I'll go to every one of these other pages and change this section to main, and then create a container. So I got to be more careful this time. Section container, right? And I'm going to grab everything, right, except for that body tag at the end, and put it all like right here, right? Save this one. Just keep on doing the same thing. So, so I'm going to say section container, right? And I'm going to change this one to main, and grab this thing, right, and paste it inside that. Okay, awesome. And let's see, we got to do the same thing for skills. So again, change this to main, and oops, I'm sorry. Let's go ahead and create the section container tag here and grab all this header stuff and footer and paste it in here. Okay, awesome. Almost done, I think. We got social media, main. So container is a very common way of creating layouts on the web. It's sort of a tag that lets the sort of browser, the CSS know that you're probably trying to do some sort of layout in here. So there, save it. I think I've got all of them now. So what I can do then is, since I have a tag that is essentially containing everything, right? All my HTML or the whole contents of every page is going to be in there. Then what I could do is I can go into my style sheet and sort of style that tag a little bit. So anything that has a container class is going to, say, have a width of, let's say, 80% for right now. And it's going to have a color. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say RGBA to use an RGB color of 255, 255, 255, and then 0.5. I actually want that to be the background color, so I'll say background. Okay, so now that gives me, you know, a background that's 50% transparent. That way I can see the sort of the image behind a little bit better. I'll do some rounded edges, so I'll do border radius. And then 20px just to make the corners round. And then I'll add some padding in there, say another 20 pixels. You can customize that a little bit if you want to. You maybe want to get rid of some of the beginning, you know, border radius. So say, since I know I'm going to have a headline at the top, I'll do padding 20 pixels. Let's see, top, right, not anything at the top. And then bottom, top right, so the right, I'm going to do 20 pixels. Bottom, I'm going to do, say, 10 pixels. And then left will be, so top right, bottom, left will also be 20 pixels. So let's see, padding top, maybe I'll add 10 pixels, just customizing the different sort of points on the coordinate system. Why does that one look so big? 5 pixels, top, right, bottom, and left. All right, so if that looks good, then what I can do now is make sure that this is actually centered on the page. So I'll do a margin 0 auto. That will center this on the page, right? And then what this will do is make sure that that image or that white background is 80% of the page as I resize things. But maybe I don't need it to get bigger than a certain amount. So let's go back home and see how this looks. I don't like it when text is too wide like this, because a lot of times, I don't know if you've ever read a book where you keep on reading the same line because your eyes go from here and then you start on the same line. So I can limit the width of something to a maximum amount. So I can say something like max width and then say like 800 pixels. That way this box will never get bigger than 800 pixels. So it's going to stop getting big like right there, or maybe even a little less than that. So 760, right? And then that looks pretty good. But maybe like on a mobile device, now think about what would happen here if I was looking at this on a phone. You know, the width of my page would be very little like this. So in that case, I may want my fonts to be bigger, and then maybe I don't really want this margin. I want it to just go full width. So what I can do in order to do that is media queries. And let's do a search for media queries, right? And what you could do is essentially create some CSS that says something like this. So let's just go ahead and copy this and do media all, and when the width is, say, max width, min width, you can use and min width. So let's go ahead and simplify this media query a little bit. So we're going to do, let's get rid of this one. Right, so we'll say container, container. And what will happen here is we'll set the width of the container to be 100%, right? When we are at a certain size. Whenever we get to a certain size, the container, you'll see it there, it changed to full width. See that? So we need to make some more adjustments because other stuff is not really working for us here. So maybe in here, when you go to a mobile device, so this would be the size at which you want the layout to change. So let's go ahead and make that a little smaller. We'll say when it's about 500 pixels wide, when the window, in other words, is 500 pixels wide, then we want to adjust the layout, right? So that it does something slightly different. So we'll go ahead and get rid of the padding, padding 0. Okay, that gets rid of our little padding. And what we also need to do is make sure that we clear out the margin and padding for the body. Margin 0, padding 0, right? So, and then the border radius, we'll set it to 0 as well. Okay, so whenever things get really small like this, the border radius gets small. Maybe we'll modify the headline level 1 to just clear out the margin. Margin 0, padding 0. So our top headline is not going to have any margin or padding. So on a mobile device, maybe we do want a little bit of margin, but not as much here, or a little bit of padding. So let's just do a padding of 10 pixels here, just so we have a little bit of breathing room on each side. Let's actually try doing a margin. Actually, no, we don't want a margin. We want a padding of 0 here, right? And then I will modify at this size. So if we actually add padding here, we have the problem with the width of the element being the padding and the adding the margin. So if we say padding here, say 10 pixels, right? What's happening is the width of the page is actually a little bit wider, right, than the size of the element, right? So what we could do is just tell, set this padding to 0 here, but then tell our paragraphs to have padding 10 pixels all around, and we'll do 0, so it's 0 at the top and bottom and 10 pixels on each side. And then we could do the same thing to the H2 tags. H2. Right, so now we have a style sheet that looks like this whenever you are working with a mobile device, and when you make it bigger, it's going to have that border, and then maybe we could use some padding here at the top. But now as you navigate through things, you can see that we've added a background, right? And we've done media queries to customize how the elements are looking depending on the size of the browser. So let's go ahead and maybe the container, let's see, normally I should put maybe some margin at the top of this container up here. So margin top 10px, maybe a little bigger, 20 pixels, right? And then when we get small, we'll get rid of that. So over here, we'll just blow out the margin and put it back to 0. Okay, so you can see the level of control that you can have with media queries. And the other thing that I wanted to show you is that you can actually customize your layout so that every page has a different element, or a different background, I mean. Let's see. So maybe what we want to do is when we are on this index page, right on this home page, we show one background photo. When we're on skills, we show maybe a different one. And we've got several backgrounds here that we can pick from. So the way that I would do that is right now, let me go ahead and save my style sheet. I have in my style sheets, right? I have this place where I load sort of a background image, right? Luckily for me, I have in every page added some HTML that tells the browser which page I'm on. So in the body tag, we created an ID of home. So in the experience sections, for example, we have an ID of experience and samples, et cetera, et cetera. So these all have IDs depending on which page you're on. That means that we can create different style sheets that load up different images in the background. So we're going to do an alternate version of this body tag, right? So we're going to say, okay, so whenever the body page is on this, has an ID of skills, then let's try to load something else up. So we'll do Golden Gate Bridge, right? It's going to load that one. And let's go to the skills page. So notice that now when I go to the skills page, I have a different photo. I go to home, I have a different photo, right? And I could do the same thing for all these different pages. Let's do one more. And we'll do like downtown Tampa or something. When we go to pick another page, experience. All right, save that. Experience. So now, depending on which page, we can have different backgrounds. And we've managed to figure out how to control things for different size devices. When the devices get to be a certain size, we have one style. When they're a certain size, we have a different style. So that gives you a lot of power in the way that you can not only customize your fonts, but also customize the look and feel depending on which pages. The trick is to add yourself an ID so that you can customize things on different pages. And also you can use media queries to control how layouts work at different sizes.